Mike Sempervive here with you for the next hour talking professional wrestling, which is something we do every single day here on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. And whether you're listening in on TuneIn or iHeart, American Forces Radio, SportsByline.com, over their affiliates like the Mightier 1090 podcast, maybe it's a replay on SiriusXM, maybe you're video streaming on Twitch and YouTube. However you're joining me today, I'd just like to say thank you. Hopefully it's sunny outside. If it's not, I at least hope it's sunny inside your mind. And it's Monday here on this program, and you know what that means. Actually, I didn't know what that meant until a little bit before the show when I found out that Bryan Alvarez is under the weather and he would not be joining me today for this program, which made me very happy that I watched AEW Rampage and Battle of the Belts instead of skipping it after having to deal with all of the Vince McMahon stuff that is taking place on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'll get you all caught up to date on that, but the Big Boss Man will be back for subscribers over at WrestlingObserver.com later on tonight with Dave Meltzer. They will review everything from Monday Night Raw, and if any more information comes out about Vince McMahon. And he'll also be back for the Filthy Show, I believe, as well, too, for all of you who are top-tier subscribers on Twitch and YouTube. I believe he is going to be back for that if his voice can hold out here a little bit. So hopefully I'll be getting some updates from the Boss Man as this show goes on, but there is a lot to get into, and obviously the big story are still the reverberations from Vince McMahon inserting himself back into power at WWE. We speculated last week on what that could mean, why he is inserting himself back into power, why he is doing it right now. And then on Saturday, we got a report from CNBC that WWE has taken on JP Morgan to possibly help with a sale of the company. So we'll get into all of that stuff when we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live. Back to the show, Mike Sempervive here solo with you today on Wrestling Observer Live. Bryan Alvarez a little bit under the weather, but as I mentioned, he will be back for subscribers of WrestlingObserver.com, which you could become a part of. Just go to WrestlingObserver.com and check out all the details there. He'll be back with Filthy for Filthy 4 Daily later on, and then post-Raw with Dave Meltzer for Wrestling Observer Radio. And you know, we do this show here for an hour at a time, but if you want us 24/7, you can try to get at us on Twitter. I am at Sempervive. The timeline for this show is at WONF4W. The broadcaster is at Sports Byline USA. And if you love pro wrestling, at Mid-Atlantic Pod. Patreon.com/Mid-Atlantic Podcast if you want to sponsor all of my adventures. Plus, you can see a lot of cool wrestling history stuff that I put up there. That's you can do that if you'd like, but I don't make as much money as WWE, and I certainly wouldn't make as much money off of WWE if I was there selling it, because they're probably going to make a lot of money. And Vince McMahon has returned to the company, and I guess we'll kind of reset things here a little bit since we talked to you last, and we last talked to you on Friday. And we had gotten news from WWE that Vince McMahon had indeed, much like the Wall Street Journal has been reporting, inserted himself back into WWE. He was looking for a way back in. He was not wanted back in any particular role, and he went through the means to force himself back in as the executive chairman of the company, still with Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon as co-CEOs, and he did that by putting himself onto the board, by getting rid of 3 people without cause and inserting himself and former WWE co-presidents Michelle Wilson and George Barrios onto the board. And why was all this happening? What is it about right now that makes Vince McMahon want to insert himself into a position where he cannot be ignored? And much of the speculation has come from whether or not they're going to sell. And we know the media rights deals were coming up. We know that they expire in 2024. Much of the conversation about those deals was going to be taking place in the second half of this year. Him wanting a role in those negotiations makes sense, but he didn't exactly have to make the power move, the type of power move that he did right now to go ahead and do that. He feels as though seemingly that there is a rush to do this. He's got to go ahead and get this done. And now the question is why? Is it because WWE is considering a sale? Have they been considering a sale and trying to line things up? And he now wants to insert himself to make sure that he has the first crack to negotiate any deal, especially if he would like to buy the company and take it back private again so that people never have to report or possibly hear about any of his misgivings and misdoings that that has led to his ouster in the first place. You know, what does all of this mean? There's been CNBC's report on Saturday that JP Morgan has been brought in to advise WWE as the company looks to line up a sale. It's been said 3 months. What the article actually said was 3 to 6 months. A deal would likely occur in the next 3 to 6 months. Said the people who asked not to be named because the discussions are private. And Sherman added that not only obviously the JP Morgan and WWE declined to comment, but that they did mention a bunch of possible landing spots for WWE, possible buyers for WWE, and who could be interested. And that has opened up a can of worms for speculation and people wondering on who it could be. NBC Universal, obviously, the longtime relationship that Vince McMahon and Bonnie Hammer had with USA for years and years. And as she worked her way up inside NBC, the relationship continued to be strong. And you see, obviously, where the USA Network would be without WWE WWE programming that gets talked about a lot on this show and on the website. They are very much in need of WWE programming. It would be a perfect setup for them. Xfinity, a massive media corporation. There's the Universal Studios things. There's lots of different reasons why it may be a good idea for them to be involved. And, of course, that's brought up a lot of other different names as well, too. Legacy Media being one of them, Endeavor being one of them, Liberty Media being one of them. They're the ones who actually have a stake in SiriusXM. They have a big stake in Live Nation in running that. Obviously, WWE being a big event and touring brand would seemingly work really well with them. There's been, obviously, the Endeavor deal, which, hey, look, the Endeavor deal with the UFC was very beneficial for those who sold, and it's been very beneficial for Dana White because he retained a position in the company. He's actually still there because they want him to be there, and we just had the situation with him slapping his wife, appearing on TMZ, and him appearing on TMZ, talking about that, and the slap fight deal that's going to be coming up, and for the most part, nothing's really been said about Dana White by anybody at Endeavor, seemingly. So, you look at what has happened with Vince. If they're not saying anything about Dana, would they look the other way? Bringing Vince in if they decide to buy the company and they want Vince on board. But that's what a lot of this comes down to is Vince positioning himself to either buy the company or make sure that when the company is sold, that he has a vested interest in what comes next as being there to run the company or have some sort of hands-on dealings with the company, which, as we mentioned last week, it's been only 6 months, and Vince McMahon could not stay away for long enough. And as we also mentioned last week, there are still things floating out there about Vince, which is why the board didn't want him back in the first place. They unanimously voted they didn't want Vince back. One of the reasons why is there are still SEC investigations going on. There are still government investigations going on into the non-disclosure agreements and into this misuse of company funds. All that stuff is still taking place, and there still may be other things out there. You remember, it wasn't until the initial reporting on this stuff came out in, I'd have to go back and look, but I believe it was April. It wasn't until August when we heard about the deal with the Trump Foundation and the misgivings about that money. We found out about the other spa case, not the one in Florida, but the one in California that we talked about, where the guy came at Vince with a bat. We found out that because in California and New York, they put a moratorium in. And so if you were sexually assaulted or claimed sexual assault, you have up to a year to put a civil case on that person. So with Rita Chatterton and with this woman in California, we found out about that because of the reporting. So how much more is actually out there? How much more is there that is really damaging to Vince McMahon? Because in any sale, I can't believe it's just going to be this type of echo chamber, the wrestling media echo chamber that is talking about the fact that Vince coerced somebody into oral sex, an employee, a female on the roster, and then when she refused his advances, demoted her and then ultimately did not renew her. There is the case, what this whole thing was built around, about the paralegal, the email of the friend about the paralegal that the Wall Street Journal, saw and found out about. That email talks about the fact that, remember, the quote of she was passed around like a toy, to somebody else. And the culture of the company, John Laurinaitis, head of talent relations, being involved in this, having this situation. And, the Wall Street Journal described it in a podcast. I think it was Ted Mann, one of the journalists on the deal, who talked about it with the board, looking at it as this was a relationship where somebody was victimized. She was in crisis kind of going into the job. She had all these personal issues. She had all these financial issues. And they basically, Vince McMahon, the head of the company, took advantage of this woman. And they're saying, after all the investigations, that the culture is now clear, everything is good. And now Vince is back. But there's a lot of other things we need to get into in the wrestling world, and I shall do that when we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live.
Your next contest this evening is a hair versus hair match.
The show, Mike Sempervive here with you, Wrestling Observer Live. Almost talked right into the show about what I was talking about during break, which was Atlanta Falcons football, the end of the season. Dom asked me about them. I'm feeling better about next season. I am, but, we're not here to talk about football. We're here to talk about professional wrestling. And, if you like professional wrestling, you should make the wrestling news part of your day. All of the news that you need to know between 5 and 15 minutes every day, roundabout, always posted up by 9 a.m. Eastern time every single day, free, everything you need to know in the world of wrestling to get you up to date. Did you fall asleep during Raw? We got you covered. What were the headlines going on in Japan or elsewhere? We got you covered there too. Here for your ride to work, your ride to school, your coffee break. We're here to get you to your favorite podcast, like Wrestling Observer Radio, which Dave and Bryan will be talking about Raw tomorrow at length. They make a lot of money in WWE. And, before I get to the amount of money they're making in WWE off of WrestleMania 39, I should note as well, too, since when we went off the air last Friday, they were having the all-hands-on-deck team meeting via Zoom for WWE with Stephanie McMahon, Frank Riddick, and Nick Khan talking to all of the talent and all of the employees on what was going on. And not a whole lot really came out of that. Obviously Vince is in charge and he's the boss and everything is going to go through him. That was reiterated. And they did talk about the possibilities of a sale, the possibilities of the media deals, the privatization of the company if it came down to that. And I know there are people that are thinking that is very much going to be the case. That is exactly what Vince wants to do, is have people lined up. Barrios and Wilson actually started in January an investment company. They've done very little since starting that investment company as far as acquisitions go, but could they be in part of something? Could Vince, want to buy the stock back, take it private? What does then that mean for SEC rules and all that sort of stuff? I have no idea, and we're just going to have to see how things play out. There has been a promise, as was promised, all of the talent, that there is not going to be a shakeup in anything with the day-to-day operations of the company, anything that has to do with them, anything that has to do with the creative or what goes on screen. Remember the statement that Vince said he was very happy with everybody there and everything will run unencumbered from now to eternity. Vince is only here to negotiate those other deals, but if the company does end up getting sold, which we're to be under the belief that they're looking to do something like that, well, if that's the case, then what happens when it goes back under the control of Vince, or when it goes back into the control of somebody else's hands? What does that mean for everybody else? What does it mean for Stephanie? What does it mean for Paul Levesque? Nick Khan, I think he's going to be okay. He'll make out in whatever deal that he helps to get made anyway. But, I guess there are some questions over some of that stuff moving forward here. But certainly looks like, as of now, that they are at least serious on paper to possibly be lining up a sale, because I don't know how much JP Morgan costs to keep on retainer, but it can't be cheap. So if this is a work, it's Vince is really going all out for it, but he obviously has mowed down and everybody and everything that he needed to do to get back into a position where he can start swaggering about when it comes to some of these deals. And WrestleMania 39, one of those deals that was made a couple years ago when they decided to have the show at SoFi Stadium, and today they sent out a press release saying that it has already set the largest gate in WrestleMania history. So the previous record was 17.3 million in 2016 for WrestleMania 32 at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The press release touted WWE setting gate records in 2022 for the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, Extreme Rules, and Clash at the Castle. As of, which by the way, Clash at the Castle they hyped up was the highest grossing event in their history, which I don't know how that's possible with the Saudi shows, unless we're just not counting those Saudi shows. But as of last week, WrestleTix is reporting that 49,584 tickets have been distributed for WrestleMania Night 1, with 3,164 available on resale. 50,114 tickets have been distributed for Night 2, with 3,246 available via resale. And according to Ian Carey's story on the front page of WrestlingObserver.com, currently on Ticketmaster, the cheapest ticket available, the get-in price, as it's listed there, for Night 1 is $120, with seats in rows 2 and 3 still available for over $7,400. The cheapest ticket available for Night 2 is $138, and the most expensive available is in row 3 for $7,400, probably the same seller. The cheapest ticket available for a two-night combo to the event is $261, and the most expensive is $7,345. So there you go. If you're going to go to WrestleMania, you still want one of those prime seats. You're really going to be paying for it for coming up here in Los Angeles. You know who also has been making money? Mandy Rose has been making money, and apparently she is going to address her WWE firing for the very first time. This is also on the front page of the Wrestling Observer webpage and posted by Joseph Courier. Rose, real name Amanda Sacamano, Sacamano? Yeah, I should be more sensitive to these names being a Sempervive. So Sacamano will appear as a guest on this Tuesday's edition of Tamron Hall, a syndicated talk show that airs on ABC stations. The description for the episode states that Rose will address, quote, her controversial firing from WWE in an exclusive interview with Hall. Then it gives the... I guess the tweet of Tamron Show or from Tamron Show where it says that Tamron has an exclusive interview with former WWE's Mandy Sacamano, all caps, addressing her controversial firing from WWE. Five-time Grammy and Emmy nominee, actress and comedian Margaret Cho stops by to chat about her new comedy tour, Live and Livid, plus an all-new Shop Tam Fam. So there you go. That's what's going to be on Tamron. And I like Tamron Hall, so I'm not going to make fun of the all-new Shop Tam Fam. Rose tweeted about the appearance. So excited for this. Everyone tune in to hear my story. The 32-year-old Rose was released from WWE on December 14th. Adult-themed photos and videos that Rose posted on her Fan Time subscription service led to her being released by WWE. She was released less than 24 hours after dropping the NXT Women's Championship to Roxanne Perez. That match was supposed to actually happen last Tuesday, right? Yeah, it was going to be last Tuesday, but it ended up being moved up because Rose was released. So actually, no, it was going to take place, I guess, was it New Year's Eve or on the, I can't remember which show it was supposed to be, but in any event, obviously they had to push it up, and obviously Roxanne Perez won the title, and then they're going to have a big old battle royal to decide who her next contender is, so... Earlier this month, Fan Time congratulated Rose on making $1 million on the service during the month of December. So there you go. Mandy Rose on Tamron Hall talking about her situation. We'll see how incendiary it is, if it is at all, or if it's just relatively soft, and her talking about the fact that she's happy doing what she's doing and making buku money on her Fan Time account. WWE Raw is tonight live on the USA Network from the Legacy Arena at the Birmingham Jefferson Convention Complex in Birmingham, Alabama. Not much has been announced for the show. I guess quickly here, everybody, just plug your ears if you don't want to hear a little bit of a spoiler from tonight that came from Fightful. So are you ready? Okay. Hold your ears if you don't want to hear this. Bo Dallas is backstage at the event. Okay, I don't know if you cheated, but you should know now to pull your fingers out of your ears. In fact, you probably shouldn't ever put your fingers in your ears. Didn't you ever listen to your mom? Don't put anything, smaller than your elbow in your ear. You ever see a kid who actually puts, I think my sister did that. She put like a bean or something like that in her ear, had to rush her to the hospital. It's, if you knew my sister, she deserved it. But in any event, so there's that spoiler that I just mentioned. But for the rest of the show, quote, in the wake of a shocking and brutal attack on the Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss will explain her brutal actions from this past week on the Red brand. That is a direct quote from the Raw preview. I don't care. I don't want to hear from her. I don't care about any of this. I hate it. I want it to stop and go away now. Maybe when the entire Howdy family gets out there, maybe it'll be something, but I am already not liking this return to the old Alexa Bliss. I just, in this feud with Bianca Belair, I'm sure Bianca wants her matches with Alexa Bliss to be over with. I mean, that seemed to be rather apparent last week, but no, the feud must continue, and it must get spookier. Also for tonight, the only other thing announced is find out what's next for Austin Theory after defeating Seth freaking Rollins in a controversial victory last week. See what awaits the reigning United States champion in 2023. So, yay, there's that. According to WrestleTix, 7,088 tickets distributed, only 316 available for the show. Much smaller setup than the last time they were in the building. Last time they were there was in March of last year for SmackDown, where they actually got 9,118 people into the building. So there is that. A couple more things to talk about, including AEW, Rampage, and Battle of the Belts. 2 really good shows from Friday night, plus some news from Japan and a little bit more. Wrestling Observer Live.
There's 1, 2. Now he's got Bryan Alvarez. He whips him into the corner hard. Adam Firestorm following up, catches a boot to the face. Bryan Alvarez with another hard shot to the head. 1, 2. This is the most aggressive I've seen Bryan Alvarez today here in Portland Wrestling. Now he's got his knee across the throat. He's choking him, LC.
Well, it's like this week Alvarez has something to prove, brother. Something to prove to his sweet little lady over there.
Of course, Adam Firestorm with a big win over Black Dragon last week. Looking for another one here. There's a sunset flip. Is he going to go down? Yes, he is. Over he goes. 1, 2, 3. It is all over. Adam Firestorm with the victory over beautiful Bryan Alvarez here in Portland Wrestling. Now out Bryan Alvarez firing away with a boot. Action continues after the bell. Goes for the back body drop. No! Face first plant by Adam Firestorm. Your winner once, looks like he'll be your winner twice. Action continues. There's a whip into the far corner. Adam Firestorm follows with a spinning kick. LC, I think Bryan Alvarez has bit off more than he could chew tonight. Miss Rentone really disgusted over in the corner. Adam Firestorm not done. There's a lion sold on top. He hooks him again. 1, 2. 2.5. I thought we had a 3 count earlier in this match, LC. I was wrong. I'm sorry.
I can't believe it. I thought Youth Gone Wild was just adding a little salt to the wound. I thought Alvarez was Alvarez and a 2-time loser, brother.
Well, Mark Watson's hand must have stopped just short of the 3 count. And these eyes of mine need glasses, because I thought I saw a 3 count. Bryan Alvarez going up top.
Oh, we'll forget about your cataracts, brother. Up and over he goes.
Nobody home. Adam Firestorm back in control, playing a bit of possum. He's climbing up top. Is Rento Onato really upset? There he goes. Swap.
Oh, and that one yet.
There's a hook to leg. 1, 2, 3. Now it's all over.
A 2-time loser. And does the LC have to look after Miss Rento Onato tonight, baby?
There's Adam Firestorm, your winner in this match. Once, twice, 3 times, it didn't matter. Bryan Alvarez not up to it. Miss Rento Onato absolutely disgusted with it. Mark Watson explaining to him it was a 3 count this time. No hook the leg. Fair and square, Adam Firestorm, your winner here on Portland Wrestling. Fans will be right back with after a message from our sponsors.
Mike Sempervive here with you, Wrestling Observer Live. Hopefully the big boss man, Bryan Alvarez, will be back with me tomorrow. A little bit of under the weather today, but maybe because he was all tired out from the trips he had to go on where a bunch of kids got sick. There was all the stress taking place of all that. You had the holidays, and then he actually left the house for something that didn't have to do with his family, and he goes to Dynamite last Wednesday in Seattle, and it was just too much for the old man to deal with, I guess. And he just, the life got to him, Mother Nature got to him, his everything got to him. And boss man out today. He'll be back, as I mentioned, tonight. But Jim Valley ended up going on Friday to the Rampage and Battle of the Belt show in an old Don Owen stomping ground of Portland, Oregon, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. About 4,500 people is what they ended up drawing for that show, but it certainly sounded like a hell of a lot more of the energy they got after not running the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast. Those fans were jacked up, and they helped to make both shows very, very good. Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson opened up Rampage against Top Flight, defeating them. Match went about 15 minutes. Chris Jericho on commentary did make a really good point that I didn't think about in the moment, but if Bryan Danielson lost that match that he was wrestling in against Top Flight, would he be out of the running for a match against MJF? And the answer was no. It was singles matches only, which is fine with me. There's always something with records in that company. It's like everybody's record, because remember Brian saying this, I think when it had to do with Tony Nese and talking about the Danielson situation with MJF, was there was a way that MJF could say, hey, look, you got to win, and you took a loss to Tony Nese, and you got to build yourself back up because everything starts 0-0, except if you're Hook or Jade. Then you're doesn't matter how you win, you're going to get a win, and they're going to remember it every single week, and they're going to put it up on a big board after your match is over and you walk back up to the back again. So long story short, this was a really good match, and no surprise with who was in it. Once Top Flight just gets more seasoning, just the better they're going to be. If they can slow down a little bit, I'm not asking them to move like cement, but again, when they understand the game a little bit more, they seem to have everything except for the promos, and those may never come along, but when you got a team that can move like that, they can tell a story in the ring in the way that they do, and they can do the athletic moves in the way that they do, when they can bring up all the other parts of their game, they are going to be excellent for a long, long time. And Danielson at the end stomped the hell out of Darius and put on the Regal stretch, even though it was superfluous, just so Aubrey Edwards can call the match off, and there was Darius unconscious, just laying there. So again, are the Blackpool Combat Club heels? No, but they do not care about anybody. You saw that with Claudio and the way that he laid out Top Flight last week. You just see how Moxley acts all the time anyway. So there's still a story to be told about them and their kind of space in AEW, not only between themselves, but also how they collide in with some of the other units. A video of Hangman Page saying he was cleared was aired and that he'd be at the Forum this Wednesday in Los Angeles to face off against Jon Moxley. Thought it was a solid promo there. Then Jamie Hayter and Dr. Britt Baker defeated the Renegade Twins, and the Pillar and the Killer got the victory when Hayter wiped out one of the twins with a sliding lariat, and Baker followed that up with a curb stomp for the pin. Then we got a House of Black promo, which I guess it was a promo. I mean, it was more of like a movie-styled vignette, but I guess we'll go with promo. There was the House of Black was all standing there, and Aleister Black was right in the middle, and he was cutting a promo. And when it was time for Brody King to speak, his feature kind of came up, and then look, you just have to see it, and I'm sure it's up on AEW's Twitter or somebody's social media or something like that for you to see. But it was quite artistic, and I thought it was good, as far as visually goes. As far as the promo itself, Aleister Black mentioned that there's a hidden history between he and Eddie Kingston, and he says he misses the sadistic version of Eddie, and he loved that guy. And Brody King said that a year ago that they were going to make Eddie Kingston eyes black as if they were like a shark smelling blood, and he would just be the uncontrollable beast that they want him to be. But now they're going to make him hear it. At least that's what Brody King said. And at the end, They said they were going to help him, so we'll see. Again, the promo and the vignette's okay. We'll get a response from Eddie Kingston a little bit later on, but it was, again, very artistic, but kind of like Miro at some point. I'd like to see, like, these guys on TV, like, in wrestling the wrestling part of the storyline, like telling the story with the wrestling and being there on TV. But it's a story for Wednesday. We'll see what happens. Pero Pelagroso Preston Vance, that's his new name. Pero Pelagroso Preston Vance. They announced him that way. He defeated Sonico, who was noted as 11-year veteran, mostly in the Pacific Northwest. This was Vance's first match as a member of LFI. He won in like 40 seconds with a discus lariat and then ripped Sonico's mask off afterwards. There was a good-looking spot afterwards where he had ripped Sonico's mask, and Sonico's standing there with his hands on his face in the ring. And obviously, if you're a luchador, the thing you don't want is to be, have your identity revealed to everyone. So you got to have the hands over your face. And if nobody's gotten you a towel, you need to use both hands. And Preston Vance took advantage of that by grabbing his legs and then dragging him out, and then he just fell like a big sack on the on the floor after he pulled him off the apron. But I thought that looked good as far as looking the part. Preston Vance absolutely looks the part. They're going to do a lot for him if his matches stay like this, stay 40 seconds long, where he's essentially hitting 3 moves and wiping the guy out and winning. I think that's probably the best case scenario if you really want to build this guy up with, any substance at all here, and make sure that he's doing it on Dynamite and SmackDown. He's not doing it on Dark. He's not doing it on Elevation. He's actually doing it on TV, so we can actually see this guy try to rise up here through the ranks. We then got a video of the Kingdom confronting Darby Allin backstage during an interview after his title win on Wednesday. Mike Bennett challenged him for the TNT title for tonight's show or for Friday's show, and Darby accepted that challenge, and they had a really, really good match, which should not come as a surprise. I know there are a lot of people that they put Mike Bennett in the Jay Lethal or Jeff Jarrett category of wrestler, and I guess if that's the category of wrestler that I like a lot more than others, then that's a category I'm for. Mike Bennett, I think, is really solid. I think he's really good. I guess the deal with him and Taven and Maria is they are holding off for ROH since they really have not gotten them involved in anything in AEW that has not resulted into them just being beat for another reason. So maybe it's because they're holding off on them for that, but I think they can be very useful as a team, as a unit. And I thought this was a great example as to why. It was a little bit of it wasn't a different Darby Allin match, but he dialed back some of the insane things that he would do. Certainly wasn't like the Samoa Joe matches, the last 2 Samoa Joe matches that he had, but really, really good. There was a missile drop kick from Darby that this is one of those things that I'm not taking it or doing it. And so I guess it doesn't really bother me, but it doesn't make any sense. And all it does is look like it hurts. And that was the missile dropkick from Darby down to the floor while Bennett was sitting in a chair at ringside. And Darby, he hit him with the chair, and obviously Bennett falls over, but man, he landed hard. But that's what Darby Allin does. He went for a coffin drop after that. Maria climbed up into the ring and covered Bennett up. That allowed for Matt Taven to kick Darby off the ropes. Bennett hit a pile driver for a 2 count. He then sat Allin up on the turnbuckles, went for another avalanche-style pile driver, but then Allin countered it into a code red, what looked really, really good, then got the coffin drop for the pin and the win, and that's how Rampage went off the air. It was, again, a very tight, really, really good show. Then it was time for Battle at the Belts and the no-holds-barred, anything-goes match for the AEW Tag Team titles. The Acclaimed against Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. Rematch from Wednesday's Dynamite. And that was a really great match, I thought. A really well-constructed, a really smart, great match with 2 old pros with Jarrett and Lethal against the Acclaimed on Wednesday. This wasn't as good, but it was fun as hell, too. It went about 11 minutes. Lethal took out the ref, which led to a bunch of interference and what would have been a pin for Bowens. Then Rockabilly ran in, Billy Gunn, and hit Satnam Singh with the guitar, but ultimately took the stroke. Satnam then shook off the guitar and then double chokeslammed the Acclaimed, and then chokeslammed the replacement referee, Mike Posey. Jay Lethal had taken out the other ref a little bit earlier on. He rips the ref's shirts off, gives it to Sanjay, and then Aubrey Edwards comes running down, and it looks like Sanjay is going to make the pin, and Jarrett and Lethal are actually going to be the AEW Tag Team Champions. Aubrey pulls him out, breaks up the pin, breaks Sanjay's pencil, shoves him down. Mic drop on Lethal. The Acclaim get the victory. Everybody's happy. I thought both of these matches were really, really good, and two feathers in the cap of the Acclaim moving forward here during their title reign. Powerhouse Hobbs had another promo where he spoke about the Book of Hobbs. It wasn't as much dialogue as some of the other ones in the past. It was pretty much short and to the point, where Hobbs said everything that happened in this Book of Hobbs is going to happen to you. So we've heard in the past couple of weeks about some of the tortures that he has had in his life growing up, some of the tortures in his family, and he's going to take out all of that on his opponents upcoming. I'm all for it. I love Powerhouse Hobbs. I love the character. I like where they're going with this right now, and I think right now it seems to be he's a heel. I just don't think it's going to take too long. They're going to have to work at keeping him a heel, because I have a feeling once he goes out there and starts kicking ass, it's going to be really hard for people not to cheer for him. Ortiz then questioned Eddie Kingston about why the House of Black didn't bring up his name during the promo. You'd figure he would be happy about that, but Kingston said, you know what? We're going to go ahead, and in Los Angeles next Friday, we're going to find out what they're talking about. So it looks like they're going to have a tag match on Friday, or at least some sort of confrontation. I'm sure on Wednesday they'll go ahead and hash all of that stuff out. TBS title, Jade Cargill defeated Sky Blue. Best match Jade Cargill's had, for sure. You know, Sky Blue is very, very young, and she's relatively inexperienced in the grand scheme of things, but she's got more experience than Cargill, and Cargill and her worked very, very well together. Ultimately, Cargill got the victory when Blue flipped onto her shoulders, and then Jade flipped her into the Jaded. And again, this is another one of those things you'd have to see how well it turned out to be. But they had right before that a near fall where Jade actually had her up for the Jaded, but Sky Blue rolled out of it and actually got a near fall, which was great. So Stokely Hathaway then cut a promo about Jungle Hook, about their match coming up Wednesday against Big Bill and Lee Moriarty. And then Orange Cassidy with Danhausen defeated Kip Sabian, who had Penelope Ford and the Bunny with him, and also the Butcher and the Blade came out at one point as well too. Not much to really say about it. It was a really fun, really solid, good match. Probably the best thing that I've seen Sabian in since he's been there, but ultimately Orange Cassidy gets the victory and everybody gets to go home happy. I'll be going home happy as well too here in about 3-4 minutes or so, but short saving we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live.
Welcome back to Rent to Own Auto Arena. The next match on tonight's Portland wrestling card: Ed Moondog Moretti versus beautiful Bryan Alvarez. This match is being brought to you in part by Tom Peterson.
What an amazing match we just had. And Tony Kozina and Damon Scythe tore it down. I do not know. Mike Rogers, glad to have you back. LC, I couldn't take much more of them. Mike, glad to have you here. Moondog Ed Moretti, Bryan Alvarez, beautiful Bryan Alvarez in the ring. I have never seen Tony Kozina that upset.
Oh, that was unbelievable. And yeah, I've never seen him that upset either.
And I'm telling you, if you don't want to be upset, I guess you just look over there and see Miss Rent to Own
Auto.
Yeah, Miss Rent to Own Auto. There she is with beautiful Bryan Alvarez. And she was none too happy last week when Bryan Alvarez was pinned by the grappler, 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. I'm telling you, fans, Ed Moretti, veteran 24 years, locking up with beautiful Bryan Alvarez, drives a knee into the midsection, whips him across the ropes, off he comes, another knee, really drives him in. Ed Moretti, Oklahoma roll, there he's got him down, there's a pin, 1, 2, no, almost a 3 count. a move you haven't seen. Miss Ritonato not looking very happy there with beautiful Bryan Alvarez and the effort that he's putting forth tonight. But fans, coming up next in our main event, the Suicide Kings versus Havoc and Mac. Again, double count out last week. Those two teams want to settle the score. Mike Rogers, I'm not sure the arena's big enough to hold them.
Oh, they're going to take off right where they left off last week. And, yeah, I don't know if this arena can hold the action that we're in store for in that main event.
Action like this each and every Saturday night, WB 32, 11 p.m., Portland Wrestling. Ed Moretti, the veteran in the ring, whips him into the rope. Drop kick for a big man. Really got up high. There's a pin. 1-2, hooks the leg. Third man in the ring, Mark Watson, almost with a 3 count. You don't see agility like that very often from a man of that size.
No, he's a big man. There's no doubt about that. And here we've seen 2 moves now that usually would be considered little man moves. The Oklahoma roll and a big drop kick.
And I know Ed Moretti was very upset last week getting pinned in the ring by Robbie Lentz, a rookie. It hasn't happened to Ed in a long time.
And that was quite the upset, absolutely.
Looking to get back on track here. Whips him into the ropes. Oh my gosh, did he hit hard upside down into the turnbuckle. Off he comes. Big back body drop. Beautiful Bryan Alvarez up and down. Miss Rinthone really, I think she's looking for someone else already. Splash off the ropes, nobody home. There's the agility. Bryan Alvarez with the Oklahoma roll himself. What?
Sempervive back here with you, Wrestling Observer Live. Put a bow on this thing here. This Monday, short notice Monday, coming off the bench, out of the co-host chair to fill in for Bryan Alvarez. They did announce some things for this upcoming Wednesday's Dynamite. If you watched any of the AEW programming here on Friday, you would know that coming up at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles, Jon Moxley and Hangman Page, Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter against Saraya and Toni Storm. Yeah, and we'll still see about that. Hikaru Shida looking like the stupidest baby face in the world, and Toni and Saraya looking like the biggest pricks in the world. Is it double switch time where Hikaru Shida, who's one of the AEW originals, is there with Britt and Jamie, and we just get Britt and Jamie cheered because people want to cheer Britt and Jamie? They'd love to see them feud, but they also don't want to see that team broken up. They probably are 50-50 on that if they're a big fan. Would they take in Hikaru Shida and face this team of outsiders, the Ruby Sohos, and all that sort of stuff? We'll see. Maybe that's the direction they're going to go in. I hope so, because otherwise, Shida, boy, she looked like a schmuck. Bryan Danielson, obviously, his march towards MJF begins. Konosuke Takeshita, not a bad match. Great match on paper and storyline for somebody to be a roadblock for Bryan Danielson. Takeshita's that dude. Jungle Boy and Hook against Lee Moriarty and Big Bill, as I mentioned. Plus, match 7 of the Trios title series, Escalera de la Muerte. At no point have they actually mentioned it's a ladders match. They've just called it Escalera de la Muerte. Now I can't talk because I'm laughing. The Elite and the Death Triangle. Plus, we got a promo from the Jericho Appreciation Society, who looked like they were dressed in all purple velvet jumpsuits and hats. In the photo that they used. Hopefully they take that look and they bring it back on Wednesday as well too. But Tuesday is going to come before Wednesday, and I hope the big boss man Bryan Alvarez will rejoin me for another episode of Wrestling Observer Live. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, whoever's producing the video, and we shall talk to you again after a while.